All right, everyone. So I had a little issue, so we're coming to you a little late, but my guest is still here, and I met this man a few months ago in a coffee shop. It was a fellow Bunker Lab city leader who introduced me to him as one of the other Bunker Lab, the city leader, because I was trying to join the organization and be one of the city leaders for Las Vegas. So we met in a coffee shop, and he also happened to be a fellow Marine Corps veteran. So we sat down, we had a chat. It was really great getting to know him and talking to him. And since then, we've done events together and we've done all kinds of great stuff. So it's been a blast. And his name is Dave Burlin, and he is a Marine Corps veteran. He currently serves as the Content Curator for LightSpeed. What's the VT for? It's just VT?
Virtual training.
All right, LightSpeed virtual training. Obviously, he's also a city leader for Bunker Labs here in Las Vegas. He is a speaker, and he's also a DJ and an MC. And he's here. I'm really excited about this. So he's here to talk about his first time public speaking. Now, he didn't decide to go into in front of a small crowd and deliver a short speech. No, he decided to make his first public speaking event debut at a Tedx event. So that takes some cahoons to do that. So he's here to tell us that story. Welcome, Dave.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great. So let's get into this first time story of yours. First off, how did you even decide to pursue a TEDx speech as your first public speaking event? I mean, what was crossing your mind there?
Well, I can't tell you the date. Normally I'm really good with that stuff, and sometimes I can pull that up, but I believe it was in 2013. I was actually helping grow a wedding DJ business into Kansas City. Now, I'd already been down in Dallas for about a year, and why that's all relevant is because for a couple of years I was driving all over the place, DJing weddings, and I was listening to books and just getting inspired about growth and learning how to grow business. And I can tell you it was 2013 because I was in a hotel in Kansas City. I went back just to grab some stuff before some other vendor meetings, and I was grabbing lunch, just sitting in my hotel room, and that's when I saw the first TED Talk I'd ever witnessed. And it was Sarah Kay. It's called If I Should Have a Daughter. And I'm a tough guy, I'm a Marine, but I was like bawling in the first 3 minutes. And it was a lot of the words that she said, but it was also just this overwhelming sense of impact that I felt she was having. And as I saw the big letters TED, I was like, what is this? And the more I began to learn about it, I started to see some other really powerful talks. I think right around that time, Simon Sinek, the Golden Circles Start With Why talk was really getting popular. And the one thing that I recognized immediately was, if I'm ever going to have a voice, this is the audience that I want. This is the audience that I want to inspire. I love the whole idea of ideas worth spreading. And that's what grabbed me by the soul. And I decided, I was going to pursue that stage.
Okay, well, how did you select your topic? So now that you knew, okay, I want to get up on that stage. So that's a big goal. That's a big ambitious goal. And most people will probably take little bites to get there, but you went all out. But let's start with, how did you select your topic? And then how were you able, because I don't know how it was back then, but right now it's definitely very competitive to get, whether it's on the TED stage or any TEDx stages, it's a challenge to get on those stages.
Yeah, so I guess I was sort of one of the early adopters. TED's been around for a while, but back in 2013, it was still fairly fresh and very new. I was actually part of a mastermind group. It was a unique group of people we met for breakfast at 5 a.m. on Friday mornings. And I remember as soon as I knew that's what I was going to do, I came to that group and I was like, guys, I got it. I want to do a TED Talk. And I was really inspired because everybody was leaning in oh my gosh. But then there was also a couple of other people from that group that also wanted to do a TED Talk. And then that was the first question that somebody asked, you know, what are you going to talk about? And I was like, man, I really have to put that into perspective. And one of the things that through that whole time of transition and learning for me as I was traveling around a lot, one thing I really realized was the power of my network. And everywhere I went, the time I was in Dallas, the time I was in Kansas City, anywhere I went in Tulsa, the fastest thing that really made me connect in a conversation was if people were veterans, you know, being a Marine Corps veteran. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about veteran stuff. And then like, well, what would you talk about? And I'm like, well, I've seen a lot of veterans be really powerful in business, and I've seen a lot of veterans really struggle. So I wanted to talk about veteran transition, but I wanted to be not just transition for transition's sake, you know, how powerful we could be as veterans into business. So the topic sort of came to life from there.
Okay, then how did you proceed to write the speech? So, I mean, speech writing is an art, it's a skill. Did you start doing some research on how to do it?
Yeah, so the research was there. Fortunately, for every TEDx license, there's a lot of red tape that they've got to get through to even get the license. What was funny was that there was two other people in our group that wanted to do TED Talks, and there was one gal, her name's Amy Campbell, and she's a lifesaver and an angel. She said, I never want to speak in front of anybody. In fact, sitting at this table makes me nervous. And it was like people that she loved. She goes, but I have a friend of a friend who has the license from TEDx a couple years ago. Let me see if I can put this together for you. So she actually put the event together. She facilitated it, and you have to have coaches that actually help the speakers and make sure that they stick to the guidelines of TED, you know, to make sure that you're not trying to sell anything or anything like that. So how I prepared for it was watching a ton of TED Talks. You know, I watched probably 100. And then at the same time, there was some really powerful books that came out around that time. One of them was How to Deliver a TED Talk, right? So I had that on autoplay all the time in my audiobooks. And then also Talk Like TED. Both very similar, but they had different things that you could pull from each one of them. So it was really a combination of that and just watching a ton of TED Talks. So I think that it was over a year later that we actually did it. So it was all talks for several years. And then it was in 2014 that she actually got the license and things really started moving forward on it. So I think it was probably 5 or 6 months crunch time that we really, you know, put things together. But there's some really fun stories of how the talk that I actually gave is not the talk that I wrote. I had some really, really big challenges. I think I tried to write the perfect speech, but the perfect speech just wasn't real. So I felt
Like,
like
what
it
do
was
you
a little,
mean it wasn't, what do you mean
yeah.
by it
So
wasn't real?
I feel like, you know, and maybe I was overthinking it. You know, I'm definitely a perfectionist and I get really frustrated. But as I prepared this talk, to me, it's like, okay, this talk is going to be the rest of my life. Like whatever happens here, I put a lot of pressure on myself. And then it was the night before when we went to rehearsal. It felt so forced. It didn't feel natural. You know, I was standing there practicing and I got so frustrated that I tried to quit. Right? That's a story I don't really tell a lot of people, but I think it was really relevant for the conversation we have here. Like that night in my mind, I was like, I'm going to walk off this stage. It was twofold. I was going to walk off this stage and I was going to go rewrite and create the perfect speech all night long and then come back and kill it tomorrow. Or I was just going to quit. And I remember I was walking out, and thankfully one of our friends that was from that same breakfast group was one of the videographers, right? We used a lot of our own resources. And he pulled me aside and he said, you know, I know what you're going to do. He said, well, I know what you think you're going to do. And I was just like, is this that what? And he goes, you're not going to quit, man. He goes, I want you to know that you're practicing in an empty room, right? He said, you're an entertainer. And when you walk around that corner tomorrow and you see all those people, it's just going to make sense. And I was like,
Uh,
man, and it was the most powerful advice. So I went home, I got some rest, the next day I took off work. I plugged in my headphones and I listened to some of the podcasts and stuff that I'd been on, in this pursuit. I listened to a couple of books, a couple of other interviews, and I just walked around all downtown Tulsa, and I just put together everything that I had written. I kind of tore it apart, and I was like, it needs to be easier.
So you
And
kept the same topic, you just simplified it.
same topic.
You
I
went and
just
used the
simplified it.
KISS the KISS principle to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a phenomenal thing. And I never knew that would create such a foundation for every talk I would ever do, because every time I've ever had pressure, I'm like, yeah, but I did a TED talk. And it wasn't to like toot my own horn. It was just like, no, that's probably like the most pressure that I'd ever been under. It's my first talk. I thought my whole future was going to be written on it. And I went in, I kind of scraped it, recreated it. I made it simpler, but I also made it just easier to talk. So the talk that I did, I almost had no preparation for. When I walked around that corner that night, I saw all the people, and it was so phenomenal. One person that I knew just through a random connection, that was the only person that I could see right in the middle. And I just talked to him the whole time. And it just made it so much easier than I had made it for myself. And that, again, that kind of gave me the confidence to speak moving forward, but also it's something that I consistently look back on, that whole journey, the whole trek to get there, and how much it's made an impact.
Well, that was definitely, I mean, it was big pressure because ultimately you set this in motion, and then a lot of people pulled together to make it happen. I mean, not just for you, but the others that wanted to speak, but it's still like you set things in motion, people are counting on you, and that adds the pressure, and then you're doing something for the first time on top of that. And so it's incredible that you were able to regroup, rethink, and say, okay, I need to simplify that. And that person was there to tell you, because I mean, you'd been in front of crowds as a DJ and an MC, so you knew that, but that he knew like, hey, that's your background, that's your experience, like this is where the gaps are at, you'll feel it when you get up on that stage. And the number one case of speaker is like, find that one friendly face and just talk to them, because ultimately delivering a speech is just delivering a conversation. And but that's still rewriting a speech and doing it for the first time, and and that not having rehearsed it, that's impressive. And in the end, your future did rely on that one speech, because it was a domino falling that set things in motion for you. So you weren't wrong about that. So way to raise to the challenge. Now, like, when you got off do you remember when you got off the stage and you were done, what you felt and were thinking?
Yeah, well, at first I felt so relieved, right? And then one thing that I've realized that has happened almost every time since I've spoke since then is there's another thing, and I can't really figure out a cure for this, so I'm trying to get better. We had a little after party, they had a little reception and all that stuff afterwards. I can't remember a single conversation. I can't remember anything from it. I was so caught up in the moment. And actually it's funny because it's happened several times since then. I get so caught up in the moment and I focus on all the delivery that there's this big wave of empty thought after, where I'm processing through everything, but I'm still trying to shake hands and meet everybody. It's happened several times since then where I'll actually forget people's names when I'm being introduced to them or introducing them. There was one person that I introduced after an event that I spoke at, and I'd known him for 3 years, and I completely drew a blank on who he was and what his name was, and I couldn't introduce him. And it was really embarrassing. But it was just so much pressure that I put on myself leading up to the event. So it's this weird fog of war that happens afterwards. And, but that was the immediate thing that I recognized. What I didn't realize is that for the next couple of weeks, I was very depressed. I was very scared. I was
Huh.
obviously scared because I felt like anyone that watched it was going to judge. I don't even know that I really had a full understanding of what was happening until that was in 2014. And I don't think I really had a full understanding of what happened or what was happening until 2018. And that was whenever I saw Brene Brown's TED Talk. And it was her second one. And she was talking about, she called it the vulnerability hangover. And like once she put a name to it, I realized that's exactly what it was. I'd put so much into that goal that whenever I reached it, I didn't, I, it's like I had no purpose. I had nothing left to fight for. It's like, where do I go from here? What am I supposed to do now? Who am I if I'm not the guy who was going to do a TED Talk? And I put so much identity around that, and it was something that I didn't expect. It's something that people don't tell you. Thankfully, as I've been a coach and stuff over the last couple of years, as people have set really big, audacious goals, I never want to be the pessimist, but I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, you are going to hit this goal, but as great as you think it's going to be, it can also suck just as bad. And you need to be ready to set that next goal. And they're like, no, this is the one. And I'm like, okay, but
Yeah, it's
when
very
you
true.
don't have
Yeah.
that anymore,
Yeah,
when you don't have that
it
anymore.
leaves a big opening and a big gap. I mean, for me, on my 40th birthday, when I finally went skydiving, and I
Yep,
had done everything that was ever on my list as a kid. And
yep,
I mean, I had done so much more than just that, but when I hit the ground and I'm driving back to the Airbnb where I was saying, I was totally same thing. I was like, I was so blank. I was like, now what? Like,
right.
and it was 2 years of feeling really empty, kind of lost, and still continuing to do things. But it was like, well, what am I aiming for? Like,
Uh,
what's left? At the same time, you're like, well, I could die and I'm just fine. I've done everything that I wanted to do. But now resetting a very big goal is something that continues to keep you going. So that's awesome. That's a great story and experience that you had there.
well, the other part too is I'd almost created a campaign around it, right? So I remember it was in Kansas City one night. I had the idea. I was about to drive back to Tulsa, a 4-hour drive. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start getting ready for this. And I remember I created the hashtag, all roads lead to TED. And that became my narrative and my story for that whole journey, even past it, because I was like, the journey doesn't stop just because I did a TEDx. It hasn't been a focus for me, but as I've went through these different topics and really tried to find a voice that the world needs, and how to make that voice louder, like, the TED stage is still very much a forefront for me. Like, the other thing that I left off is when I really got intentional, that whole group that we had, the Breakfast Club, there was an author that sort of inspired that. He's the most impactful author of my whole life. His name's John Acuff, and he had this book called Start. And what he did and how we kind of all found each other was there was a group on Facebook, and it was the Start Experiment, and it was basically these different little things that you could do every day to start working towards your big goal or your big dream. And right about that same time that I found that group, one of the daily tasks was, it was, the goal was, let's start small and then go big. But I always go big, so I don't follow directions that way. But one of the daily tasks was to write a Time magazine article and stop thinking small for a minute and go big, like as if you've already accomplished all your biggest goals and all those things. Write a Time magazine article about yourself from the future, about a past person that's your future self. And I wrote, the first time I did a TED Talk, and it was so crazy because that was in the spring of 2013, and I wrote it from the future of like 2030, but I wrote it as if the first time I did a TED Talk was in 2023. And what's interesting is it was 14 months later that I took that stage. Now, it was a TEDx talk, but part of me still wonders, like, there's still a great shot for me to aim big and go for the TED stage. I'm still just working through all that stuff, but that's become the whole narrative is, hashtag all roads lead to TED. I've inspired a lot of people. I've coached a lot of people that have done their first TED Talk. People that, people reach out all the time. Hey, I saw you did it. How did that happen? And it's always a fun story to tell. But it always puts things into perspective for me on how that happened and how powerful that first time was.
Yeah, that's really great. And that's the beauty of first times. They hold so much power and revelations, and so much can come out of it. It doesn't even matter how small it is. It's the
Right.
same thing, small to big. First times can have big impact on your life. All right, so let's shift over. Let's play the first time lightning round.
Nice.
So the way it works is I'm going to throw 10 different options out there. And if it's similar to the app, so if it's something that you've done before, you would say swipe up. If it's something you've never done, not interested, left, and something that you've never done but would like to do, we go right. All right, first one, do calligraphy.
Yes. So I have done that.
Up. Okay. Did you take a formal class or?
No, actually, this is going to sound really funny. I sat next to a kid in junior high who, who had moved to a little town in Oklahoma from like Phoenix or something like that. And he was in a gang and he did calligraphy tattoos for gang members. And in the back of the class, he taught me how to do it. So
Oh,
I learned, yeah, I know, totally crazy, right? So I actually, for most of adolescence, like that's what I drew. Is I drew calligraphy and Old English lettering and stuff like that. So
you know what? That is why I love asking these questions because, oh my
yeah, I
God,
learned it from a gang member.
it is those kinds of answers that are just priceless. That
You
is,
can't script it.
no, that is so awesome. Okay. Attend a fashion show.
Yes, I have done it, and I've actually hosted one before.
Oh, okay. Go deer hunting.
Yes, I have done it.
What was it?
Am I swiping up? Is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
up. Yeah. When you've done it, it's up. What was your,
Nothing happened. As most deer hunting and fishing, like nothing happened.
it's just a lot
Yep.
of waiting in silence.
Yep.
Okay. Be hypnotized.
Yes, I have done it.
Do you have videos of it? Did it work? Were you able to be hypnotized?
I think it was at a school thing. It was at we had a guest speaker at the youth academy that I used to work at, and it was just I don't really know what happened from it. I mean, I was just like I think I was the guinea pig, but I believe it's happened. Yeah,
Okay.
but it wasn't to like quit smoking or anything like that.
Okay. Well, I don't know if they turned you to chicken or
Right.
what they did, and there was any video evidence of it. Watch a flamingo dance show.
I have not done that, but I would like to. So do I?
That would be right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Participate in a charity race.
Yeah, I have done that.
Okay. Did you raise some good amount of money?
Yeah, that was for one of the veteran organizations that I used to help back in Oklahoma, and I actually hosted a series of those events called Reps for Vets, and we raised a little bit of money for some different groups. It was good.
Oh, very awesome. All right. Eat at a Michelin star restaurant.
Ooh, I've not done that, but I absolutely want to.
All right, we're going right on that one. Place a bet on a horse.
Yes, I have done that as well. Oh wait,
It's up. Did you
Yep.
win?
No, not at all.
Do hula hoops.
Nope, but I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. I think I have the first that I'm going to line up for you.
Nice.
We'll have to catch it on video. Go to a heavy metal concert.
That was, yes, and it's a funny story. That was actually my first concert that I ever went to, and I won tickets to it. I didn't know who the band was, but I learned really fast, and it hurt really bad. Yep.
All right, so there's a couple of firsts in there.
Yep.
First concert, was it first time winning tickets for anything?
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
and then discovering that was not for you.
No, actually, I got pretty hooked on that.
Really?
I went to heavy metal concerts for a while, That band was called Ministry. So it was a little rough. And then I think that was in 1995. I was good with heavy metal up until 1998. And my friend had won tickets to Pantera, and I got my ribs caved in, and I never went back to another heavy metal show.
Oh man.
That was
So
not
from
good.
like the mosh pit, is that what they're called?
Yep.
Is that from
Yep.
hopping in those? Yeah.
I didn't really hop in because one doesn't, a smart kid doesn't hop into a mosh pit at Pantera. He gets thrown in and has no control over it.
Wow. Yeah, that I ended up at one, I think it was in New Orleans, which is a weird place for that. Was it? Anyways, and once that started, I was like, what the, like what how stupid do you have to be? And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
out of here. I'm like, nope, I am not getting hurt. Okay, so I was a little older too, so although I was not keen on physical contact that would lead to bodily harm. That's why, like, even the Marine Corps playing tag football, or was the frisbee the frisbee game too, where people tackle each other, or ultimate frisbee. I
Yeah.
was like, no, I'm out. Too many Marines with broken bones and busted, lips and ankles, and I was like, no. Mm-mm. Okay, so the next question is the prompt of the day. Your first speeding ticket.
Yeah. Oh, you mean describe the story or what? Or what happened?
Yeah, what
Or,
happened?
yeah. So I was 16 years old, just barely started driving.
Okay. You're legally
And
driving.
yeah, I was legally driving, and it was pretty ridiculous. I was coming down a hill, and it was going into a different town. It was actually leaving one town, and kind of there's a 14-mile gap in between the other, and just naturally coasting down a pretty large hill, my speed increased, and it was a perfect spot for somebody to just, clock people. I think I got caught going like 11 over the speed limit,
Ah,
which, to me, it was kind of ridiculous. I think it was like a 45-mile-hour speed limit, but you were leaving a town and going to the highway. So he caught me right before it turns to 55 and 65. So yeah, that was the first.
yeah.
And I don't think I got another speeding ticket for almost 5 years, I think.
Were your parents mad at you, or how did they take it?
My mom wasn't too mad. My grandpa had something to say about it. He was, but at the same time, it definitely grabbed my attention early enough that, I wasn't that reckless.
All
Or at
right.
least they never caught me.
No, I'm still trying to figure out when my first one was. So I can't tell the story yet because I haven't solved the dilemma of when it was. I'm pretty sure it was probably driving to Vermont. I'm gonna guess, because living in Massachusetts and my mom being in Canada, we would drive through. I would drive through Vermont, go see her, and I've always been a speed demon, very, very heavy right foot. So I have gone away with not getting tickets many a times.
There
Um,
you go.
yeah. So, okay. So final question is, how are things going for you right now? How are you making the best of the situation, what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, well, it's funny how it all ties back to speaking, and going back to that very first time. I've spoke 100 times since 2014, when I did that first TED Talk. I've done some keynotes, I've done some retreats. I've been working on a keynote presentation for the last 2.5 years or so that's really been polishing up, talking about building relationships, why networking, and things are going good. The role that I have at LightSpeed VT, the virtual training company, it's really been interesting because as I've been a speaker and I've spoke on different stages, I found myself sort of curating a network of speakers right now of people that are missing stages. So it's a very hot topic. There's a lot of people that were supposed to be speaking this spring and summer at different events for different companies. So I spend most of my days connecting with other speakers and just popping in little groups and stuff like that. So I'm an extrovert, so it is a little frustrating to just be stuck at home. But at the same time, I also worked as a sales and leadership coach for a couple of years, and I was really used to working at home and time blocking. So I've kind of brought some of that back to life. but I've spent a lot of time just connecting with other great speakers. And just one example was I popped in on a Zoom call happy hour Sunday night and talked about connecting with other speakers, and somebody connected me to somebody. They set a time with me that very next morning, and it's literally like the best connection that I've had in a year. Not even if we ever worked together or not, it was just similar stories, similar backgrounds. He's way, way, way on the East Coast. We're way, way, way on the West. And we're just talking about locking some serious circles of people together and really connecting a lot of people. So for me, it's been fun because I see all of these different opportunities to connect with people that were there all along, but we just, a lot of times people haven't been using them. I think the best quote that I've seen from this whole thing was somebody said, "This is forcing us to do what we should have been doing all along." And, you know, all the relationships and all those different things. So I'm really trying to maximize that time to still reading books, you know, still learning something, trying to stay motivated through this, but really trying to flex that connection muscle and connect with a lot of people like you, and connect a lot of people to you, and just figure out how I can help.
Yeah, well, awesome. Yeah, nothing. You're the kind of person, nothing is going to stop you from connecting with people. So it's
Right.
just like, all right, it's a different way I have to do it. Not a problem.
Right.
Might be a little cheaper to do it this way. As a matter of fact, less driving around, less buying drinks, and all that good stuff. But there's still so many ways to connect with people, and I do
Yep.
appreciate you connecting with me and coming on the broadcast. So thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.